Before spending money on a service, many of us check online reviews. But after one Omaha man posted his experience on Google, a company sued him for what he said.
Tonight, First Alert 6's Mike McKnight investigates the allegations of lost business versus freedom of speech.
After making a call for a locksmith service, Michael Kearns says he got served.
And to be sued over an honest Google review, to me, is just a form of censorship.
In 2025, Kearns posted a review on Google about his call to Superior Locks and Car Keys, LLC.
I wanted other people to know that they did not have the equipment to install a deadbolt, which to me was astounding for a locksmith.
Besides posting 1 star, Kearns added a comment about being told the tech lacked deadbolt installation equipment.
And I responded in my review and said, that's like Dunkin' Donuts saying, sorry, I don't have coffee.
After canceling the service call for work on his front door and posting a poor Google review, Kearns learns that among the 300 readers of that review was the owner of the locksmith company, who sued him for defamation. Superior Locks alleged the review injured its business reputation as a result of false statements made by the defendant in an amount to be proven at trial.
Deputy showed up, served me this.
Defense attorney Matt Lathrop took the case and won a summary judgment that dismissed the defamation lawsuit. County Judge Cheryl Lohaus said Kearns' statements were not false, but his personal opinion after interaction with Superior, and Superior has not identified any loss of business.
The summary judgment tells these businesses that are trying to silence people doing Google reviews, negative Google reviews, it tells those businesses that this is free speech.
The owner of Superior Locks declined an on-camera interview, but his email to me claims Michael Kearns has repeatedly posted the same review, and the concern is not the review itself, but the ongoing repetitive nature. A pattern Superior alleges shows Kearns is posting on behalf of a third party.
No, it's nonsense. The only time I've ever updated my post was when there was a development on this case, like when I was served and when we won, and a judge dismissed the case.
Suit for defamation fails on.
Joined by his wife, Laura, Michael Kearns thanked attorney Matt Lathrop for not only protecting his free speech, but setting a legal guardrail that might keep businesses from suing those who post bad reviews. In Omaha, Mike McKnight, First Alert 6.
The defense attorney says he found 11 similar defamation lawsuits that Superior Locks and Car Keys filed against people posting negative reviews. The owner of Superior says the company only pursued legal action when there's reason to believe the reviews were not from actual customers, but part of a coordinated effort by competitors. Michael Kearns says he doesn't buy that explanation. The Google review has since been taken down.